McGraw-Hill Professional presents The Decency Code, The Leader's Path to Building Integrity and Trust, written by Steve Harrison and James E. Lukaszewski, narrated by Scott R. Pollak. Foreword. All of us in the world of workforce transformation are continually challenged to find the best practices that will produce the outcomes worthy of great organizations. I have made a career out of helping business leaders transform their workforces so they can have an impact on the world. In the course of that work, I have witnessed many leaders struggle to achieve business success while maintaining the trust and respect of their colleagues. Building and maintaining trust and respect are among the most important work of leaders. It helps to have a model. For me, Steve Harrison serves that role. I met Steve shortly after I joined Lee Hecht Harrison, also known as LHH. I found myself challenged by a demanding situation. One of our biggest clients had recently merged with another company, and leadership faced a number of challenges on the people side. It was clear to me that the client was looking for something more. I asked Steve to spend some time with the client, and the results were magical. He offered a completely different perspective, shifting the frame of the situation from challenge to opportunity. The client came away from the interaction inspired. I studied how Steve did it. I was immediately impressed by the daily behaviors Steve displayed from the moment we met. He modeled the practice, well described in this book, of greeting the receptionist as the CEO of First Impressions. He reminded me that in any relationship, getting the first impression right has a durable impact on the long-term experience. Any business that values fashioning customer delight based on positive touch points understands this dynamic. First impressions are telling. I have interviewed countless candidates for positions, and they are invariably agreeable and well-behaved. After the interview, I often ask the receptionist for their experience with the candidate. Candidate interaction with the front desk seems to me highly revealing of character. More than once, I have decided not to continue the conversation with a candidate because of what the receptionist reported. Corporate leaders agree trust is paramount. Sustainable businesses are built on trust. Too often, however, the talk is little more than conceptual. This book demonstrates how organizations build trustworthy environments grounded in decencies. What has really shifted in today's business world is increased transparency. When a company breaks trust, the world knows about it immediately. A world driven by social media makes the whole topic of decency much more important than ever. This book reminds us that repetition and recognition of small decencies are the two key elements of building resilient corporate cultures. If an organization focuses on the small things that need to be done every day, over time it will create the critical mass that yields the behavioral shifts we desire. Steve and Jim Lukaszewski have joined up to write The Decency Code. America's crisis guru, Jim, brings 4 decades of experience assisting corporate leaders facing conflict, contention, controversy, or opposition. Steve's first book made me think about leadership dynamics in a new, bold way, and I predict that with Jim's contributions, the Decency Code will do the same for a new generation of readers by teaching them to take highly focused, civility and decency-inspired, ethically appropriate action. If you are genuinely invested in helping people without expectation of return, you are on the right track. In this book, Steve and Jim help you model leadership grounded in civilities and decencies and give you the tools to help integrate a culture of decencies into your organization. The resources they share will help you create a healthy management mindset, improve business performance, promote trust, reduce stress, and build better relationships with your colleagues and teammates. I resonate with simple tools and concepts, often challenging to achieve. The concepts and tools that Steve and Jim share in the Decency Code may be straightforward and inexpensive to implement, but they require a resource that most enterprises find difficult to sustain: commitment over time. Sustaining a civil and decent culture, especially when an organization is stressed or struggling, is a measure of the resilience that every company needs to survive adversity. One thing that sets Steve and Jim apart from other business authors is their compassion. They genuinely know the pressures that frontline supervisors, mid-level managers, and C-suite leaders face every day. In these pages, you will read of companies that have resisted unethical conduct as well as those that have succumbed. The book makes the case that a flourishing culture of civility and decency resists unethical conduct. In the Decency Code, you will find a fully developed and actionable model for building a decent workplace culture. Anyone invested in building a corporate culture that inspires a sense of purpose, empowers human beings to do their best in any business climate, and inoculates their organizations from ethical failure will be well rewarded by applying the many lessons of this book. In their encouragement, humor, and compassion, Jim and Steve are committed to your success. Ranjit de Sousa, President, Lee Hecht Harrison, Zurich, Switzerland. A welcome note from the authors. Why the Decency Code will matter to you. We'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the Decency Code and tell you why it will matter in your life. Why did you pick up this book, whether you were at a bookstore or you found it in a library or someone shared it with you? We're guessing your questions are something like these 5. 1. Can this book answer the questions I have, see, hear, or think about with respect to decency, civility, and integrity? 2. Can this book answer the questions that bother most of us about why there is such a decency denial and deficit in America and in the world today? 3. How do I bring my own personal views and decency, civility, and integrity habits from my personal and family life into my working and professional life? 4. How can I help reduce the contention and controversy that seems to grow everywhere? 5. Can this book help me and those I care about have happier lives and more satisfying careers? The Decency Code is a book that answers these questions and much more. Just take a dip into any chapter. We believe you will find some important answers and perhaps even more important questions that need to be answered as you learn more about the Decency Code. In the past few years, civility, integrity, and decency have been turned upside down and are now even more essential to discuss and explore. As we envisioned this book beginning around 2009, we questioned ourselves with increasing intensity. Why does any book about decency, civility, and integrity matter? How is another book going to contribute to the growing public conversation of decency, civility, and integrity? Can any book arm an individual against indecency, incivility, and phoniness? As the book evolved, its purpose, value, and need became more evident to us as authors, and we hope it will for you too, as the reader, learner, and practitioner of the Decency Code. Here are the perspectives we are coming from. 1. The Decency Code provides many pathways to respect, civility, and integrity. The most powerful pathways include accountability, civility, compassion, empathy, honesty, humility, and principle. 2. But there are even more pathways: apology, candor, character, destiny management, yours, dignity, empathy, engagement, forgiveness, honesty, openness, responsiveness, transparency, and truthfulness. 3. The Decency Code defines decency from different, relevant perspectives. 4. The Decency Code helps explain which barriers to decencies are hard to overcome: accountability versus doing whatever it takes, civility versus callousness and confrontation, compassion versus indifference and suspicion, empathy versus apathy and carelessness, honesty versus culpability and silence, humility versus arrogance and overbearance, and principle versus insidious, unethical behavior. 5. The Decency Code provides and provokes lessons you can apply to your daily life at work and home. 6. This is a book your boss can use, and you, if you're the boss, to move your organization more deeply into the concepts of civility, decency, and integrity, the three overriding components of the Decency Code. Our goal for this book, and the conversations we hope it will trigger, is to answer these and other questions on every single page. As we wrote the book, our principal question was, what questions does this page answer? Or what questions on this page need to be answered? Or what questions can only be answered by the reader, user, and practitioner of the Decency Code? We hope you'll join us. Steve Harrison, New York. James E. Lukaszewski, Minneapolis. America's Crisis Guru. January 2020. Chapter 1. Why Now? If we can't find a way to take an interest in our employees as people, we're committing them to a miserable work life, and that makes ships go a lot slower. Patrick Lencioni. The question this book will answer is, why is it that America has learned, better than any country or culture in the world, how to build great companies and great leaders to lead them, yet many of these same leaders seemingly look the other way as their companies and colleagues sink into ethical mischief and outright criminality? Why is it that even after the behavioral trauma of Enron, WorldCom, Tyco, Equifax, VW, Theranos, Madoff, Wells Fargo, Nissan, the beat goes on, seemingly unabated? Fraud, bribery, insider trading rings, and Ponzi schemes remain ubiquitous. And why is it that despite the Sarbanes-Oxley regulations, Dodd-Frank, and the growing ranks of compliance and risk officers, corporate roguishness and misbehavior persists among leaders in loafers? This book proposes that the priority of rushing to greatness too often produces temporary perceptions of success and misguided leadership. All too frequently, it turns out that these great companies are not good companies, and their highly publicized and highly compensated leaders turn out to be compromised. Too many of these organizations and their leaders have been revealed to be unequal to the ethical standards to which they've committed. The authors prescribe a solution, one that may be shunned by some less enlightened corporate leaders, but will become fully embraced by just about everybody else. Our prescription is that the reporting of public companies as well as larger private companies needs to incorporate palpable evidence of their intentional ethic, developing and maintaining a civil culture, designing programs to promote the workplace as an ethical, desirable environment, rewarding values-based behavior, honesty, and integrity as much as profitability. In other words, organizations and leadership that can demonstrate that they are good companies with values that are so simple, sensible, constructive, helpful, and positive that only the critics, naysayers, and bellyachers will be opposed. After all, leadership is what drives decency, civility, integrity, and associated pathways that make up the Decency Code, including accountability, civility, compassion, empathy, honesty, humility, principle. Traditional media continue to swing between high treason and high glamour as they document the disconnect between corporate promises and leadership misbehavior. Film, TV, and print media often trade on the excessive lifestyles of those who rise and fall in the tainted glamour of the tarnished business rock star or big-time producer. Consider two vivid examples of corporate shame. Volkswagen altered the pollution control devices on 800,000 vehicles to falsely meet environmental standards. Wells Fargo employees intentionally cheated millions of customers who found that their trust in the bank was betrayed by misaligned incentives established by flawed leadership. In both cases, employees and their supervisors and managers by the thousands were responding to their bosses' signals or incentives. The corporate cultures of the respective organizations, rather than growing stronger, were made weaker. then too weak to deter misbehavior. These are two real and unfolding stories of intentional, bad, unethical, and some clearly illegal management behavior. When this book is published, there will likely be other instances of corporate misbehavior. Decency requires more than compliance. Compliance and ethics programs are proliferating. Business schools are expanding their curricula, ethics and engagement managers are being hired, and leadership programs are multiplying as the subject of corporate culture has become sexy. But the incidents of fraud and gross misconduct continue. The weekly TV series American Greed continues to report on stunning real-life examples of leadership misbehavior. This book proposes that since corporate greed continues, and since the post-Enron controls have been inadequate to detect, prevent, deter, or eliminate wrongdoing, different answers are needed if only because of the realities of the new world of work: flexible, insecure, robotic, delayered, virtual, unstable, out of balance, fast-moving, complex, ambiguous, global, diverse, and ruthlessly competitive. Members of Generation X, Generation Y, and Generation Z coexist with the survivors of what we term the re-generation in business. As companies redeploy, reorganize, refocus, renew, realign, and re-engineer, organizational change efforts have been described by management guru Tom Peters as upsizing, downsizing, right-sizing, and capsizing. To quote change management expert Charles Handy, a work world of seemingly endless whitewater. We argue that institutionalized decency is a success factor in helping leaders and their workforces to revitalize, reinvent, reinvest, and respect. Now a new kind of manager is needed: whitewater navigators who thrive in our turbulent work world, leaders who understand that the antidote to corporate cultural disorder is leadership to help replace confusion with order, opaqueness with clarity, complexity with simplicity, hopelessness with confidence, greed with selflessness, and suspicion with trust. The ongoing trust deficit is, in the eyes of one compliance expert, an unfortunate reality. Thus, he said, there are always people looking for shortcuts, intent on gaming the system, who in good times get greedy and in bad times get selfish. It has become clear that something more than regulation, jail terms, compliance training, hotlines, and values statements is needed. This book argues that the New Age whitewater leader has tools at his or her disposal to forge an environment that will sustain an enabling culture where innovation is stimulated, performance is rewarded, trust is deep-rooted, and where it feels good to be here. The indispensable element is trust. The Lexicon of Trust Busters. During his 50-year career in crisis intervention and prevention, covering hundreds of assignments in the United States and globally, helping leaders and their organizations prepare for, respond to, survive, and recover from crises, Jim Lukaszewski has developed a lexicon of leadership trust busters. Arrogance, executive pomposity. Testosterosis, hitting back first. Broken promises. Fear creation. Deception. Denial. Overplaying strengths. Lack of empathy. Procrastination. Disrespect. Ducking responsibility. Dismissiveness. Disparagement. Inauthenticity. Concealment. Lying. Isolation, AWOL. Intimidation. Over-optimism. Sarcasm. Minimizing. Tone deafness. Corrosive delegation. Misguided incentives. Operating on the edge. Fostering a do-whatever-it-takes culture. They did what? Said what? Promised what? Now what? Any combination of these trust busters can be corrosive to the human spirit and counterproductive to culture enrichment. Think Albert J. Dunlap at Sunbeam, Dennis Kozlowski at Tyco, Ken Lay at Enron, or Bernie Madoff. They destroyed trust and created victims and critics, some of whom look for and find opportunities for revenge. Rather, it's about integrity, compassion, truthfulness, transparency, apology, inclusiveness, and the morality of ethical expectations of leaders and leadership. Jim describes himself as more of a management pathologist. He has seen so much repetitive negative behavior, decision-making, and self-forgiveness that he has developed insights into the pathologies, the origins, nature, and course of negative management behavior and of leaders who are headed for trouble. Steve Harrison's 50-year career spans labor relations, human resources, entrepreneurship, and global corporate consultancy, including career transition, outplacement, leadership development, and employee engagement. Steve's observations align with Jim's as they relate to workplace instability and leadership shortcomings, especially in turbulent times. As well, they are aligned in proposing the antidotes: telling the truth, listening, genuine recognition, keeping rich traditions, modeling ethical and compliant behavior, demonstrating a willingness to sacrifice profits for principle, developing and sustaining a coaching culture, building trust at every opportunity, respecting innovation failure, collaborating genuinely, vocalizing, publicizing, and operationalizing core values, ethical standards, civility, and decency in all scheduled operations and performance reviews, in all group company functions, in every new hire onboarding session, in every CEO message, in all compliance and ethics training, in all executive coaching programs, and in all leadership programs and talent development processes. What decency looks like. A business decency is a thoughtful, meaningful gesture offered that in ways small and large can enhance a corporate culture. Decencies are how we more humanely treat one another. John Cowan, author of Small Decencies, reminds us that we can be true to our values both at home and at work. The more humanely we treat one another, the better we will be as people and the better we will be in doing our life's work. We are colleagues who want to make a positive difference in another person's day. Out of such actions, multiplied dozens of times over a period, corporate cultures are enriched and ethical behavior reinforced. Widely accepted and adopted, decencies become a force multiplier for employee engagement. The late Herb Kelleher understood this when he created Southwest Airlines' Culture Committee to honor people in unglamorous jobs. Top Wrench Award or Top Cleaner Award. Doug Conant, Campbell's ex-CEO, regularly hand-wrote thank you notes to deserving employees all over the world. Herbert Baum, ex-CEO of Dial Corporation, regularly held informal chats, serving hot dogs, as he hosted Hot Dogs with Herb. Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, was inspired in 2017 to initiate a national conversation about the moral responsibilities of businesses. Jim Lukaszewski has taken Tim Cook's commencement address at MIT on June 9, 2017, and transformed it into Lukaszewski's Civility and Decency Manifesto. Highlights of Jim's manifesto include: business has a moral obligation greater than the accumulation of wealth and sole allegiance to Wall Street. Businesses should be places where individuals can find meaning, purpose, and can serve humanity, something greater than themselves. Businesses, like technology, can do great things, but, like technology, businesses don't necessarily want to do great things, they just do things. Business purpose comes from those who lead. Keeping people at the center of business and in life can have enormous impact. Whatever you do in life, it must be infused with the humanity, values, and decency that each of us is born with. Use technology to reinforce and amplify the rules of decency and avoid pettiness and negativity. Measure your impact on humanity by the lives you touch rather than popularity. Stay on your personal course, focused on what really matters. Bring your values, compassion, empathy, and concern for consequences into your daily life and your work. Avoid those who advise otherwise. When you know your course is right, have the courage to take a stand. When you see a problem or an injustice, recognize that you are the only one to fix it. Use your mind and hands and heart to build something bigger than yourself. Strive to create the best, give the best, do the best for everyone. We applaud Tim Cook's real vision. His vision lays a useful groundwork for this book. His passion and his quest for a fraud-free business culture reinforces the author's experienced and deeply held conviction that the terms integrity, ethics, and values are too theoretical and intangible to be clear, vivid, and actionable for corporate cultures and their leaders in turbulent times. The power of institutionalized, tangible, visible, measurable, and pervasive decencies creates a deterrent to misbehavior, misdeeds, and contaminants to employee engagement. Cultural decency helps inoculate workplaces from the doing whatever it takes crowd, regardless of consequences. Whitewater leaders. The co-authors argue that the keys to whitewater leadership effectiveness include agility, adaptability, and intuition. We are familiar with the seemingly endless variety in leadership theory: authoritative, collaborative, servant, charismatic, emotionally intelligent, level 5, blue ocean, etc. But successful whitewater navigators, regardless of their predominant leadership styles, display a unique talent, especially in a crisis: the ability and agility to adopt and embody most of these styles during any given day. Collaborators need to be decisive. Authoritarians need to be collaborative. Quiet and humble leaders need to step up and communicate more aggressively than they ever have. Noisy leaders need to know when to zip it up. Cerebral or process-oriented leaders quickly learn that turbulent times place a premium on managing decisively. And, ironically, during the very time when they're reacting, the effective whitewater leader needs to anticipate, to see around corners, in the words of Colin Powell. As one CEO said, "I spend half my day thinking, what am I not thinking of? What could possibly catch me by surprise?" In 1982, Terence Deal and Alan Kennedy published their groundbreaking book, Corporate Cultures. They said this: "Great leaders make success attainable and human, and the great stories that emerge in a culture tend to spread information about valued behavior." We believe that valued behavior includes a universal commitment to small decencies, gestures by leaders that are tangible, replicable, and sustainable. They create stories, and stories travel. Praising people in public, criticizing in private. Greeting visitors promptly and enthusiastically. Valuing receptionists, they are our directors of first impressions. Rejecting executive pomposity. Promoting trust through accessibility, transparency, and candor. Institutionalizing civility. Making a difference. Institutions laid low. When our institutions are laid low, it's often because of internal events and intentionally counterproductive decisions of leadership. Think of Volkswagen in the wake of a systematic effort to cheat on emissions tests. Such events, ethical shortcuts, fraud, deception, misrepresentations, are invariably self-imposed internal episodes that arise because people are fallible and incentives are perverse. This book focuses on the challenges imposed from within. These are the activities that are covered by the newspapers and cable TV shows. They lead to resignations and firings, payments of huge fines, and occasionally criminal charges. These behaviors violate well-understood ethical, cultural, and legal norms. The violations create extraordinary challenges for leaders. many of whom fail to rise to the challenge. These violations are always a choice. Collectively, we call them incivility.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?